Welcome to a new week here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Micciche, co-owner of True North Retirement Advisors, a fee-only fiduciary financial advisory practice managing over $400 million in client assets. If I sound like death right now, that's because I feel like it. I'm sick. As many of you know, I have 4 children. They've been back in school for a month, and right around this time of year is where I start to catch the colds and all the things that they have. But you know what's interesting this time around? None of my kids are sick. Just me. I'm the only person in the household who's sick. So I thank the good Lord for that, because it's hard to be sick and take care of other kiddos. So I'm sure they'll be following here shortly. But anyways, back to the podcast. Okay, so here on the podcast, I help you plan, save, and invest wisely to live a fulfilling and financially secure retirement. And I do so with brief, daily, actionable tips. I'm so glad you're here, making this podcast part of your daily routine and spending a few minutes with me each and every day. All right, so the theme this week is keep calm and vote on. Am I going to tell you who to vote for this week? No. So don't worry about this becoming overly political and partisan. That's not what I'm trying to do. There's enough of that out there right now. But with just a couple weeks before the election, many of you might be anxious or worried about the outcome of the election. How is that going to impact you and your investments, the economy, inflation, taxes, etc.? So this week, we'll take an honest look at what history tells us about election outcomes and how that impacts the markets and the economy. I'll urge you to look beyond the rhetoric and personalities of the candidates towards the reality of their policies and how they're likely to govern. And from that, we can better see what the election's outcomes impact will likely be on markets, economy, etc. Most importantly, I urge you to simply vote, even if you don't like either candidate, which is true for millions of Americans in this election. It is your sacred duty and privilege as a citizen of this country to vote. About 2/3 of eligible voters in America end up casting their ballot. And the number one reason people don't vote is because they are too busy. I would really encourage you, there is nothing more important than voting on election day. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, please make it a priority and vote. Many people also forget that it's not just the president they're voting for. All other candidates on the ballot, measures on the ballot you're voting for as well. They call them, the down ballot measures and candidates below who the president is. Those are going to have a much bigger impact on your daily life, your taxes, services. Every day I drive down the road and I see there's a police fire safety renewing a tax that's already in existence. So voting on that, yes or no, is going to have a much bigger impact on my daily life, especially if I ever need to call 911. It's going to impact all of that. The other thing, this is kind of a funny aside, not funny, not funny. I live just outside of Portland. I actually live in the suburbs of Portland. I'm not in the city, but the city is actually throwing out their entire government this November. This is according to Politico, quote, "In a sign of either hope or desperation, Rose City voters decided to throw out their entire government structure and replace it with a weaker mayor, expanded city council, and ranked choice voting. A major driving factor was the passage of Measure 110, decriminalizing all drugs in 2020. That was backed by 74% of Multnomah County's residents. Voters couldn't, or at least didn't, anticipate how this policy change would reshape a city already strapped for money, dealing with a public health crisis and confronting rising rates of homelessness and fentanyl abuse. Drug use shot up, surprise, surprise. Homelessness worsened, and taxpayers fled. Now, Portland has 19 people running for mayor and 98 people seeking seats on the city council. Portland is a pretty extreme example of how local policies and the people running things in your city, county, locally impact your everyday life. So I don't live in Portland, so I don't get a vote in this, let's just call it a bleep show. But I was born here. I was born in Portland. I go to the city multiple times a week. It definitely impacts my everyday life, and all the issues of the public health crisis, homelessness, fentanyl, none of that's exaggerated. The city has changed dramatically for the worse in the last 10 to 15 years. And it was just accelerated by COVID. It's very sad to see. So I hope you'll take your right to vote seriously, educate yourself on the policies of the candidates and issues on the ballot, and cast your vote. All right, so come back tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the importance of keeping your emotions not out of your election decision. That would be helpful too, but we want to avoid the emotions around the outcome and who is in the White House, who's in Congress. If you're not happy about that, we don't want that to spill over into your investment decisions. My name is Ashley Micciche, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.